Hello and welcome to another That's Just Wild Q&A, where we take on your burning questions about nature and wildlife. I'm Steve Backshall, and as always, I'm joined by...
me, Lizzie Daly.
And me, Sarah Roberts.
For ad-free listening, our newsletter, special deep dive episodes and members-only benefits, you can subscribe to us at that'sjustwild.com.
The first question is for you, Steve, from Alex Spencer. What are your thoughts on great whites in UK waters? Will global warming bring jaws to British seas?
So one of the big mysteries is why we don't see great whites in our waters all the time anyway. If you look at certain distribution maps of the great white shark, they include the UK, and there is no reason why they shouldn't. You know, we have everything in our seas that is needed for great whites. We have an abundance of seals that, you know, is one of their favourite things to feed on. And if you look across the pond on the other side of the North Atlantic at the same latitude to where we are, great whites, are absolutely there. It isn't necessarily also anything to do with temperature and with global warming and with our warming seas, because they are perfectly capable of existing in waters that are much colder than ours. So their temperature, their area that they can live in comfortably is between 27 degrees at the very, very upper end and down as low as 3 degrees. So they're spotted off the coast of Alaska and Newfoundland. And our waters don't get to be anything like that cold. So that is not a reason why we should not have great whites. But we definitely don't have them or have them in any large number because there has never been a verified sighting and there has never been a verified catch in British waters. And bear in mind that we have had verified sightings. You know, I was filming yesterday with people who've seen 6-gill sharks off the coast of Cornwall. A scalloped hammerhead has washed up in a pool off the coast of Cornwall. Greenland sharks have been found in Northumberland and in Cornwall. So there are all kinds of really out there shark species that do very, very occasionally as vagrants crop up in our waters. There has never been a guaranteed sighting in our seas, although there have been a couple that are interesting. So, for example, in 2016, off the coast of Lewis in the Outer Hebrides, a team of marine biologists were working when they had a big shark swim past their rib, and they all thought that it was a great white. And they were, pretty good, decent marine biologists who should have a decent idea of what it was. Put that alongside the vast majority of sightings that we get in particularly the tabloid press, and they are all basking sharks, very occasionally things like poor beagles. There was even, rather gloriously, in the Daily Express just a couple of years ago, off the coast of West Sussex, there was what was a picture said to be the dorsal fin of a great white shark, until locals pointed out that it was actually the Littlehampton Ferring outfall pipe was that photo. It wasn't a great white shark fin, it was a sewage pipe. So
That's so British.
Isn't it just, the tabloids get absolutely bonkers about, anything that could possibly be a great white sighting in our seas. There's never been a guaranteed one. Although they do definitely get as close as the Bay of Biscay, which is no more than a few hundred miles off our shores, probably, a week or so swimming away from British seas. So back to the original question, will warming seas lead to great whites being in our waters? Well, not because of the warmth of the water, but possibly because of a change in prey. So something I'm sure that we're going to talk about on this podcast, because it's absolutely incredible, is the return of bluefin tuna to our waters. They are now being seen in British seas in a way that they haven't been for hundreds of years. We've seen them off the Hebrides, we've seen them off Cornwall, off Devon, off Dorset, and big tuna are a choice prey item for great white sharks. So it is possible that the abundance of different kinds of prey may start attracting great whites into our waters. But you really do not have to be worried about going to Blackpool Pleasure Beach and being munched by jaws.
I think the idea that white sharks are in our waters is entirely plausible. I think we are a little bit extreme, as you say, Steve, assuming that we're just literally going to go down to the beach and see them just hanging out along our shores. But, as we've covered actually earlier in this week's episode on the movement of white sharks, they are transoceanic. They can go down to real depths, and we're only really starting to understand what these movements look like. I think it's also important to note that in places like Hawaii, where they know they've got white sharks all the time, that they're even rarely seen. they're brought in and sometimes spotted when you get big carcasses like humpback whales or whatever, washing up along the coastline, and then you kind of get these huge white sharks actually seen by locals. But it's very plausible that we have white sharks already, very close to shores, not necessarily in the UK, but kind of heading over the Atlantic in this way.
Or if they do, they're passing through our waters. They're on their way to somewhere else. It's very, very fleeting. It's inconceivable that's never happened. There is
Exactly.
no question that great whites would have passed through certain areas of our waters at some times in the past. It's been incredibly rare, but it's possible. Someone could catch one sometime soon. The increase of the shark swimming tourism industry, which I know all three of us have done here in British waters with things like blue sharks and poor beagles, putting chum out into the water, shark fishermen, anglers putting chum out into the water. A nosy great white could easily crop up. And, should it happen, I, for one, will be very, very excited. But the hysteria from the tabloid press is going to be off the charts.
It's coming.
Now, for you, Sarah, Jay Dole on Instagram asks, why have hammerhead sharks evolved to be how they are?
Really good question. I think this is mostly aimed at the cephalofoil, which is the shape of their head, that hammer-like shape at the front. And it's a massive advantage to have that as a shark for multiple reasons. Firstly, having their eyes on the ends of those hammers. So if you ever get to see a hammerhead shark, you'll see on either ends, furthest apart as they could possibly be, that's where their eyes are spaced, and it's also where their nostrils are spaced. So that means vision-wise, they have this incredible almost 360 vision of everything going on in the ocean, which is really, really useful for them as a predator, but also to protect themselves as prey, because sharks eat sharks too. And then on top of that, having their nostrils so far apart makes them really well adapted when it comes to following any kind of chum slick, like Steve was just saying that the fishermen are putting out, but naturally that would occur if there is a dead or dying fish anywhere in the water. That would be really useful for their hunting strategy. Another thing that's really worth mentioning is the ampullae of Lorenzini. So the electrosense that sharks have, it looks basically like freckles on the underside of a shark around their nostrils, or blackhead spots, however you want to look at it. But they're just little holes that are filled with gel. The gel conducts electricity, and that sends a signal to the shark's brain. And that's really important because every living creature has a bioelectric field around them. So even us, our brain is sending an electronic signal to our muscles, our heart. That's why those muscles are contracting and relaxing. But it means that a shark can technically, if they get close enough, sense that electricity from us. And that's really useful for a hammerhead, because a lot of the prey that they go for could be rays, which bury themselves under the sand. And so they might have smelt that there's a ray nearby and they're swimming along. They can't see the ray. They know it's there, but if they get close enough, then the signal from the ray's heartbeat is going to go ding, ding, ding into those little electrosense. That's sending a signal to the shark's brain. And the next thing that's really advantageous for these sharks is they can use that head to pin down the ray to the sand so that it can't get away when they go to bite it. And if that ray does get away, or if they're chasing black tips maybe, because the great hammerheads love to predate on the black tip sharks, which are small, very dynamic sharks that move very, very quick. But the hammerheads, what they can do, because they have that flat, very elongated head, they can use it as a dynamic way of turning. I don't know if any of you guys have seen hammerheads hunt. It's spectacular. They can turn on a dime at insane speeds because of the shape of that head. So they've adapted and they've evolved that way as a complete and utter advantage to be able to hunt and predate and to survive.
Yeah, I mean, I've filmed that exact process in great hammerheads from above on a drone, and seeing them just going round and round and round in circles and pinning the rays down is really extraordinary. And quite often you will find great hammerheads that have stingray barbs impaled in their jaws around their mouths from where the stingrays have tried to defend themselves, and whipped up their tails, and the shark has scoffed them and left the barb impaled in their face.
That's like one of those really cool arms races, though, isn't it? Because we think of the sharks having that electrosense, but the rays, they also have the electrosense too, so that they can sense when there's a big predator coming through the same ampullae of Lorenzini that they also have on their underside. And for them, they'll stop breathing, they'll stay really still. But if they do need to use that venomous barb, then they can wait until the optimal moment when that shark's heartbeat is swimming right over the top of them, and it can go, and it's their best chance of survival is to try and use it at that point to defend themselves. So the next question is for you, Lizzie, and it is from Isaac CJBD on Instagram, and they've asked, what is it about Greenland sharks that allows them to have such a long lifespan?
Great question. For anyone who doesn't know what a Greenland shark is, they are the longest living vertebrates known to science. They can survive well over 400 years. They live in the icy depths of the North Atlantic and the Arctic, and they are extraordinary. I don't want to go as far as saying a spooky shark, but they have this kind of just a very slow presence. You see footage and pictures of them. I'd love to get up close to a Greenland shark. Going to firstly, how we know they're so long-lived. Scientists have actually radiocarbon dated, so being able to find out the age, essentially, of these Greenland sharks by using eye-lens proteins that they've got, because they don't regenerate. So as that eye-lens protein is formed in the womb, they're able to identify when it was actually formed. And there was some really cool research in 2016 that was looking at particular Greenland sharks that were born in the 1600s, which is amazing.
That's mad.
Yeah, but I mean, everything about their lives is it's extremely cold, and as a result, they've kind of slowed everything down. And you get this a lot with species that have that longevity, that kind of long life, where they have quite kind of slower metabolisms and later sexual maturity as well. For Greenland sharks, they don't reach that maturity until 150 years of age. They grow about 1 centimetre a year. And as a result, everything else in their bodies has slowed down as well. They run on kind of this low power saving mode, and have to, because, they're in an environment where they may not come across a lot of prey there over long periods of time, but they do live in a pretty harsh and kind of extreme cold environment.
There's one interesting thing to add, which is that even though they move incredibly slowly and in this real sluggish kind of almost barely seeming to be moved way, biologists who've tagged them have reported that they go off like a shot as fast as any other shark, so they can move fast should they need to. And they've been reported having all sorts of things in their stomachs, including caribou and even chunks of polar bear. So they clearly can travel fast if they need to, if they're on the hunt. But for the most part, they live very long and very, very slow. And that tends to be, as you say, true of most species that live in very cold places or in the deep is also true.
That's why it's such a tragedy, though, isn't it, when we do lose big animals like that, because they take so long to replace themselves in the food chain. Every shark matters on that front. But the coolest footage I've ever seen, one of my friends, Melissa Marquez, she was on Ocean X, I think it was called, and they went down in submarines. And I don't think I'd ever really seen the size perspective until you see this sub, and then these massive sharks that are like against the screen of the sub, which has little tiny people in it. And you're like, they're kind of eerie, aren't they, as you said, Lizzie?
Yeah, absolutely awesome animals. I just love the idea of like a polar bear carcass just like wafting down 2,000 meters to meet a Greenland shark.
Did it do that, or did the Greenland shark just come up like a great white and we just haven't recorded the behaviour? And it just went,
I'm going for that second story regardless.
You heard it first. Right, final question, Steve, is from a big fan of yours, Sophie Buste. Is it true if you flip a shark so it's belly up, it goes into a trance-like state and just lies there?
It's absolutely true, Sophie. Big shout out to you. It's called tonic immobility or catatonic immobility. It's something that happens in all kinds of different animals. So, for example, if you were to draw a line on the floor in front of a hen, it will just stare at it and become absolutely hypnotized by it. That's considered to be tonic immobility.
What?
It happens,
How have I
it
never
happens-
heard that?
Have you? Oh my gosh, look it up on YouTube. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
It's absolutely amazing. Lots of animals will go into a tonic state. Human beings, sometimes under extreme stress, will go into a tonic state. In sharks, it is very pronounced. Why? Lots of possible reasons. It could be that it is just a panic or a stress reaction. It could be an overload of signals. You were talking about all the different super senses that sharks have. It's possible that it could be something to do with mating, because scientists have recorded that it happens more in females than it does in males. And it's not just from flipping them upside down, but let me talk about that first of all. So the first time that I filmed in Bimini with the legendary shark doc, Sam Gruber, we were working with little shark pups. This was in the year 2000. And to study them and study their stomach contents, he would put them into a bath of anesthetic to essentially just calm them down so that he could then work on them. I came back 5 years later and he discovered that all he had to do was take these pups, flip them upside down, and for a good 15 minutes they'd just lie there. And as long as he aerated their gills, he could do any work he wanted to, no stress to the animal. It was absolutely amazing. That particular part of tonic has been, I guess, exploited by things like orca. So for the first time in May of 2022, from a drone, it was filmed orca singling out a great white shark, flipping it over onto its back so it went tonic and couldn't basically flee, and then just ripping it so they could excise and remove its oil-filled liver. There are other ways that you can get a shark into tonic, one of which is by hyperstimulating the nose. So you were talking about the ampullae of Lorenzini, the sensing organ that's in the snout of a shark. I was working with blue sharks off the coast of San Diego about 10 years ago now, and a big male blue shark, he was probably 3 meters long, biggest I've ever seen, kept coming round, ignoring all the food in the water and coming and pushing his snout into my tummy and then into my hand. He wasn't trying to bite me, but he clearly enjoyed the physical sensation. And at one point, as he was like pushing his snout into my hand, his eyes rolled back in his head and he just folded. This 3 meter long shark just folded in the water and just fell over onto his back and just went to sleep, completely hypnotized. Absolutely unbelievable.
Did you flip him the right way up, or did he come out of it?
Oh yeah, no. I kind of grabbed him by the fin, flipped him over, and off he swam, and then came straight back round and did it again. I mean, there's clearly something about it that this big shark really enjoyed. Working in Cuba with silky sharks, I've been told by the biologists there that they went into tonic if you folded their upper tail fin, the lobe of their upper tail fin. This again was about 10 years ago. I certainly wouldn't do it now, but there is somewhere in the annals of the Natural History Unit hours and hours of footage of me swimming after silky sharks trying to grab a hold of their tails and failing dismally. I look back at it now with no great amount of pride.
But it just sounds like that old saying, like, catch a tiger by its tail, isn't it? Like, it just when these sharks can like turn around and bite their own tail, it's so risky.
Yeah, absolutely. But I need to finish this off because there is actually some video from Duncan Brake to back all this up, and it was shot at Bimini Shark Lab. So this is with a young tiger shark, a tiger shark pup, and you can see the animal being flipped over onto its back in the sand and then just going, just lying there snoring out cold. And this allows scientists to be able to do all the work they want to do. You can evert the stomach of a tiger shark. You can pull it out through its mouth so you can see what they've been eating. You can take all the samples you want to take. There's no stress to the animal, no drugs, no chemicals involved. It allows you to work on it because it's basically hypnotized in tonic immobility. So yes, Sophie, it's absolutely true. It definitely happens. It's one of the weirdest, wildest things about sharks, and it's something that both orca and scientists can take advantage of.
Love it.
Okay, so we've had so many questions about sharks, so we're going to quickly fire through them. First of all, Sarah, do sharks like to be touched?
I was about to say ask Ocean Ramsey, but now I'm going to say ask Steve Backshall.
Oh, they're great.
No, we don't know because sharks don't talk. But what I would say is there's a lot of people that are now inspired to try and touch sharks. It's really, really a risky thing. You've got to respect them. They are wild animals. Sharks have a sensitive membrane on the outside, so it can be risky for the shark, but also risky for the people too. So highly advised, just watch them with your eyes.
Lizzie, do sharks really never sleep?
They do actually sleep. Steve's mentioned, in that tonic immobility that we just talked about, how they're able to go upside down and still, as long as they've got kind of water pumping over their gills. Nurse sharks will do this. They'll sit on the bottom and they'll do something called buccal pump breathing. But obviously that ram ventilation is needed to move water over their gills. The reason I'm talking about this is because they reduce their brain activity. They kind of go into like a slower state, but they don't sleep in the way that we do, in like a deep REM, snoozing for hours on end. But yeah, they do.
One for me, which shark species is the most endangered? Very, very hard to know. There are some that we have in the scientific record that may be extinct already, and certainly some of the freshwater shark species like the Borneo shark and the Ganges shark, if they're not gone, they are right on the brink. Sarah, how many teeth does a tiger shark have? And that's from Ruby, who's aged 4.
Oh, yeah. More teeth than you, Ruby. Generally, somewhere around 150, but it depends on the individual. And they have rows of teeth. So they've got 2 sets, the upper jaw and the lower jaw, just like we do. And they have somewhere around 24 teeth on each one. But what they have is rows and rows and rows of teeth behind those that can pop forward. So in total, around 150, but there could be a lot more or a few less, depending on the shark.
Lizzie, why do we know so little about white shark births, and will we ever find a nursing ground?
Great question. We've already talked about this a little bit. I think we will one day. I think with new technology, new science, there'll be a point where we can, if not, observe it or film it, it'll be something that we know of through this new tech and new deploying of tags and things like that. We know so little about white shark births, of course, because they are huge kind of ocean wanderers. They go to depths far out of kind of our reach, and so for us it's one of the best mysteries about white sharks that still exists today.
I have to say, one of my good friends, a shark researcher, sent me a photo of a baby great white shark that he found earlier this year. The paper's yet to come out, so I can't reveal where it is, but we are well on the track.
Awesome.
You're getting that annoying song stuck in my head as well, just with that reference.
Don't start. Don't do it.
And last quickfire questions for me. How far away can sharks sense movement in the water? So one of their other super skills is the lateral line. Many fish have it, runs down the length of their body, and it's really good at sensing vibration. Not very far away, though. Probably about as far away as the length of the animal itself, but it can pick up the wake or turbulence that is left by an animal that swam away and that is long gone. The movement in the water, the shark can sense it.
Right, that's all we've got time for this week. Send your questions along to questions@that'sjustwild.com and we'll answer them on the show.
Now, we are just a little spring lamb of a show, so any support is really welcome. You can follow us on your favourite podcast app. Leave us a review. It makes all the difference to the whole team.
And for ad-free listening, our newsletter, special deep dive episodes and members-only benefits, you can subscribe to us at that'sjustwild.com. Remember, we're on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and you can find us at That's Just Wild Pod. Thanks for listening. See you next week.
See you next week.